The bell tolls at midnight. Greetings. I'd like to welcome all of my midnight marauders. Come on in, get comfy, and lend me your imagination. Have you ever had the feeling that karma was a monitoring spirit that lies in wait for the most heinous acts of evil? Well, for Page Winfield, a young woman intent on carelessly satisfying her greed to the detriment of others, karma swiftly comes, knocking with bells on. I call this Midnight Tale, the gas station attendant. Archibald Beasley's gas station sat on the corner of an old dirt road between Gravel Road and Gold Village Way. The bifocal-wearing Page Winfield was a service attendant of that quaint, deserted establishment. She sat at the window on an old, rickety wooden stool with the cotton coming out of the top of the cracked fake leather seat, reading her favorite fashion magazine, Sultry. It was about 10 minutes until quitting time. Paige, a cosmetology student working nights to pay her rent and buy a little food to get her through the week, was tired and eager to get home before it started to rain. Paige wasn't much of a hard worker and also lacked decent customer service. This fact wasn't a shock to most who knew her. Paige, the ne'er-do-well, is what she was known as. Many of the people who knew her swore that she was evil. Last week, she sold a little old man a sandwich that had been outdated 2 weeks prior, ripping the expiration date off of the merchandise before doing so. Needless to say, the man began vomiting after sitting outside eating it. The paramedics were called not by Paige, but by a passerby who spotted the poor man doubled over. Paige was one of 2 service attendants, and all of the updating store goods and stocking merchandise was done by a 60-year-old named Claire Beasley, the store owner's wife. Claire was a kind and sweet, heavy-set woman who lived to bake chocolate chip cookies and bring a plate to work every week just to offer to customers. Paige would always take complete advantage of Claire, knowing she could get away with just about anything. Even the funds coming up extremely short every week. It was 12 a.m., and Paige gathered some of the store's merchandise for her own use, including a 5th of whiskey, a pack of cigarettes, toilet tissue, and zigzags. She set the alarm, turned off the lights, and exited out the front door. Outside, Paige wrapped a thick chain around the front door handle and clamped it in place with a heavy-duty padlock. Paige turned to leave, but something caught her eye as she looked through the glass window. Inside the store, a frail, dark figure stood in the far corner facing her. Caring less if she may have accidentally locked someone inside the store, Paige hunched her shoulders and said to herself, "Oh well." She then jumped in her old pale blue Malibu. She put her key in the ignition and turned it. The car turned on and sputtered for a bit before turning off. "Ugh, not again," Paige uttered to herself. She tried over and over again to get the car to start with no luck. She desperately needed a tune-up, but serial procrastinator Paige always complained that she had no time for that. She sat in her car and hurled out a barrage of horrible curse words about her car before proceeding to crack open the bottle of whiskey and taking a giant gulp. After the whiskey began to take effect, Paige's liquid bravery kicked in, and she decided she'd walk home. Suddenly, she saw a figure in her rearview mirror standing behind her car, but all she could make out was silver glowing specks where eyes should be. Confused about the dark figure, Paige opened her car door with such force that it slammed against the pole barrier next to the gas pump, causing an ugly dent in her car to match the others. Paige got out of the car and a cold wind suddenly assaulted her from head to toe, drawing her attention to the walk ahead of her. "I really hate this walk," Paige said revoltingly as she grabbed her backpack from her passenger seat. slammed her car door closed, and began her journey home. She began down gravel road, shivering from the frosty chill of night, semi-buzzed from the whiskey. She walked, holding her backpack over one shoulder. She put her earphones on and cranked up the volume so she didn't hear the wind howling in her ears like wolves stalking their prey. Suddenly, the rain started to fall on her boots like small pebbles falling from the sky. An angry Page began to curse the sky at the top of her lungs. Page looked out into the distance beyond her rain-soaked bifocals, and what she saw sent a cold chill down her spine. Down the road, the same dark figure from the gas station stood there hideously twisted. The smell of decay began to resonate from the direction of this ungodly figure. Page began to slowly walk backwards before turning to run at top speed back towards the gas station. Page rushed towards the door. She fumbled, pulling her store key from her pocket before using it to successfully open the padlock, removed the chain from the door, and hurried inside. Page locked the door from inside and crouched down behind the cash register counter. She left the light off just in case that hideous thing was lurking about outside of the store. To her surprise, the shivering and terrified Page spotted the silhouette of the dark figure out of the corner of her eye inside the store. She tried to focus her attention on the dark figure when she was suddenly met with the deep crackle of an ungodly laugh, succeeded by an even more sinister voice that said, "I've got you now." The dark figure moved closer to Page, and its form was clearly revealed. Page was frozen in fear as she now looked at what appeared to be a gargoyle with silver specks for eyes and a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. Page's eyes opened as big as saucers, and she screamed, overtaken by complete terror. She shook uncontrollably and struggled to stand to her feet, which now felt like heavy, numb stumps. She ran to the exit and tried to unlock the door, but suddenly felt an icy cold claw slowly sliver down the center of her back as she began to fall face forward. The following day, at the crack of dawn, a scream was heard by passerbys and those living near the perimeter of Archibald Beasley's gas station. Poor Claire Beasley was met with a devastatingly gruesome sight. Page Winfield's cold, stiff blue body was laid out in the doorway of the store with her eyes wide open as if she'd been frightened to death. Several days later, the coroners reported that Page had ingested poison. Detectives revealed to the Beasleys that Page's death was just the latest in a string of recent poisoning deaths. Not long after, in a nearby hospital, a little old man on his deathbed confessed to a nurse that he was an ex-con whom 35 years ago was convicted and sentenced to 30 years in prison for the murder of 3 college roommates. He was found guilty of poisoning their beer in the apartment they all rented together. He also confessed that he was responsible for recently poisoning bottles of liquor with thallium at several convenience stores and gas stations in surrounding areas. He passed away shortly after confessing. Reports revealed that he had become violently ill after ingesting a turkey sandwich with lettuce riddled with E. coli bacteria. As a matter of fact, it was believed it was one of the stores he may have victimized. How sad and harsh a lesson from karma can be. Even though some time has passed since the incident, some say on rainy nights you could still see Page Winfield in front of Archibald Beasley's full-service station, sitting in the window staring out at the cars traveling down gravel road. But then again, maybe it's just an old folk tale.